Hello. Uh, I'm turning the camera on and recording in the context of receiving a request to fix a problem with a website that I made or worked on. Well, I built, but it was in the context of this whole sort of situation, this horrible mess I've ended up in. And it's like, it's a situation that's hard to explain, but basically it ties into everything that's wrong with education and the economy, and people who are just not in the right job, not in the right situation, and are trying to find answers or whatever. And it's like I'm trying to work my way out of this situation, or from this situation to something more. So to be more straightforward, there's a psychiatrist, Ed Hallowell, who has written some things about how brain science can save you from the wrong job. And he's written about how, both in terms of work and in terms of school, a lot of times people are expected to do things that are just not a good fit for them, or they end up in the wrong job with expectations that are just more than they can handle, and that just were neuroscientifically, in terms of their actual brain function circuits, there's an overwhelming challenge presented to them, given the overall situation. And a lot of times this just is just a horrible fit. And this has been my situation in a lot of circumstances in the context of education. And then that's led me to drop out of school at a number of points, including college a number of times. And it's like, it's always been met with this sort of like, it's this shame thing of failure. And like, for me, dropping out has been the right thing to do. And it's like, this ties back into this. Well, in 2003, for example, I had returned to school one time, and I was taking an introductory English class, and I was 23 at the time. And one of the prompts in that class was, which was one of a long list of possible things to write about that I picked, was on jobs moving overseas and how that can be dealt with. And my response was basically that Americans need to innovate. Americans need to create new jobs. And not long after that, I dropped out of class. I dropped out of that class, and it's like, well, out of school completely. One of many times I've dropped out of school, and it's like, because there's got to be something else. There's got to be a way forward. When my attempts to go through the academic system have just not led to me learning effectively, and I'm the child of intellectuals, basically, of products of the academic system themselves. My dad's an anthropologist, for example, and my mom ended up completing nearly 3 master's degrees, the second 2 after, well, with the hope of finding work. But it's part of this trend I see where a lot of people return to school, go to school with the idea that this will lead them to work, and then they amass all this debt. And my mom's come to have extreme memory problems, and this has led to, well, complications on a number of levels. But she's one of many people who's received all these degrees, amounted all this debt, and she can't pay her debt back. And I've also built up a lot of debt, and I'm trying to dig out of this situation. And I've also set up this company which is in rough shape, Sympadia, oriented around the idea of connecting up learners with education and information relevant to their situations, whether inside or outside of school. So this channel, Doctor of Degrees, is meant to be an outgrowth of that, and it's still in very rough shape. My life is in rough shape, and I'm trying to figure out kind of the pieces for this, but I'm trying to launch some kind of a career that blends many of my different interests, including neuroscience, law, how learning works, literature, cinema, tropes, tvtropes.org, for example, is this site to jump that indexes patterns that exist in literature, video games, cinema, television, and so on. And I found that a lot of these patterns are present in my life and useful as points of references. But it's like now I sit here and I've recorded so much video, and I've uploaded a bunch of it, and a lot of it's in really rough shape, but I'm still just trying to get, it's like, how can I explain my situation, and then who do I connect with, or how can I sort of look for common denominators between my situation and the situations of others, and then look for ways that these can be solved. And so, for example, in my situation, I really am constrained heavily by not having money, income, and cash flow in general. And I'm also expected by a lot of different people, and I have been, to provide various services. And it's like I've done a lot of freelancing, I've done the PA thing and all this stuff, and like a number of other people, I'm looking to use YouTube as a way forward, both in terms of a resume kind of a thing, and to actually create some kind of a show, or I don't know, we'll see how it goes. But the point is that many people are in situations where they're constrained by debt and a lack of income, or very limited income. And it's like, there are people who are in just really difficult situations where every move is like a problem. And it's like, and yet there are methods that can be used to help people. And this blends sort of what's traditionally dealt with by psychology or psychiatry with what's traditionally dealt with by banking, or having a job, or having an employer, or having parents, or having somebody, some reasonable authority figure with which to interact, who's not just looking at their immediate situation, and has some sense of longer range planning and so on. And it's like, banks just want their next payment, psychologists just want to get paid. Or, I mean, again, it's like, it might be useful to talk to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but based on my experience doing that, there's a limited amount of value that I've received from that, and I found a lot more value in actually recording myself and watching and analyzing my own interactions, as well as recording certain conversations with other people I've had, and reviewing them and saying what's happening in this exchange, and reflecting on all of the interactions to the extent I can I've had in schools, with parents, with other people, and it's like, what dialogue was exchanged, what happened, how did I end up in this situation, and how can other people be prepared or assisted with their situations, or not ending up overcommitting, with different people having totally different expectations and all these types of things. And these situations where people are just trying to dig themselves out and get one thing, and it's like with these sites I've built, I mean, I need help, I need a team, and it's like I have a network of people, a small network of people that I know and that I work with some and interact with some, but it's very ambiguous where things are at, and it's like, I'm looking to create an integrated production company or process of some kind, or connect up with one in some manner, where some of these different things can be dealt with, and the various people I know perhaps could be connected up with work that's a good fit for them, and where they can get paid according to what they're good at. And this gets back to this finding the right job, or finding an okay job where one is not miserable. And it's like, this is really like one of the goals that I have. And I think there should be a campaign about this. Like, how can a person like be on some track to get somewhere, even though you can't always know where you're going and all that stuff? The idea of just like descending further and further into hell is not a promising one. And I find that a lot of times when I talk to people for help or just conversations, it's just like, I mean, there's a limit to the extent that my life is anyone else's problem. And then a lot of the advice I get, just it doesn't fit the situation, or it's not compatible with what I see overall, including what's going on in the world at large and what I see in terms of my potential future and the future of other people, which goes back into this education problem, which is really, really, really something that needs to be addressed. And it's like, a lot of people are talking about this stuff. Lots of people have called for a revolution in education. Well, and it's happening in different respects, but this goes back to like, what do individual people do in various situations, wherever they are in the world, whatever their situation? How do they find information and ask for help, for example? And how can this be done in a more effective way than things like resumes and soup kitchen lines, which address like a symptom or an immediate situation, but not a longer term issue. So, or even things like food stamps. And it gets into like, traditionally there are these roles like policy wonks or intellectuals, and yet they usually have salaries and so on. But I'm trying to blend up being entrepreneurial and innovative with just trying to make sense of life and helping pull together tools and points of reference for other people to make sense of life. So I'll leave it at that.